Sublette County, Wyoming. It's one of the most sparsely populated counties in the lower 48, an iconic outpost of the American West. But it's changing, and fast. A whole way of life is disappearing. One woman, in many ways an outsider, is trying to save what can't be replaced.
When I first came to Pinedale back in the mid-90s, you had a hard time figuring out if anyone was awake out there, but it was a gentle place. It felt like it was moving at the pace of a horse. Nowadays there is a frenetic rush to it, and there is a sense of invasion. This was a community that before had a reasonable balance of ranching, tourism, and energy development, and now it's almost entirely energy development. What we're looking at is the impact of 1,000 wells. They have been approved and are going to drill another 4,400 wells out here. 4,400 wells. There's going to be 4 times more of this development, 4 times more of this traffic.
And this is just one section of drilling. In another field just south of here, more wells are pumping, another 800 and counting. You see, Wyoming is in the midst of a sustained oil and gas boom. This time it's an all-out rush because of rising prices, politics, technology.
By all rights, the bucking bronco on the Wyoming license plate should be replaced with an oil rig, because Wyoming's pretense at being a cowboy culture is no longer true. Between 1/4 and 1/5 of Wyoming's land mass has now been leased out to the oil and gas companies. The ranchers will tell you it's nearly impossible to get someone in now to work on the ranches, to fix a fence or do irrigation or move cattle or really any of that sort of ordinary ranch work, which is why young men would have come to this community before, was for that sort of work. It's not easy money, but you earn your love of the land. We don't talk about being possessed by a piece of earth. But once you are, then the next step, which is to love it and protect it and fight for it, as in this piece of land is something I want to pass on to future generations, then that just comes naturally. I don't feel like it's not a choice for me.
Ozone is just 3 molecules of oxygen. Normally O2 is good, you want that, but O3 causes problems and it gums up the works in your lungs. We had a heads-up alert about it 3 years ago with the little science fair project one of my students did. She decided she wanted to do an ozone project, and I said, let's do a ground ozone, and it was horrendously high. The atmospheric scientists for the BLM and EPA said, oh, that can't be true. She's just it's just a high school little project, and it can't be right. And then, lo and behold, the next year, here it came, all verified that that was the fact. In this past winter, we had 5 ozone warnings that showed that we were out of containment. This whole thing is an enormous machine that's oiled by money, and it won't stop. It won't stop until it all dries up.
This part of Wyoming borders on Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks. Antelope and mule deer from the parks migrate here for the winter. The oil and gas expansion, coupled with other development, has put big pressure on big game. The mule deer population has dropped 46% since 2000.
This is the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. It's the animals coming out of the first national park ever made in the world, let alone the country. And this is what's left for them to live on. Companies initially came in on well pads that were going to be spaced 80 acres apart, which would allow for antelope, for example, to coexist with the rigs. And now that spacing has been reduced from 80 to 40, from 40 to 20, from 20 to 10. They've been migrating for at least 6,000 years, and in 8 years we've managed to dwindle it down to this stranglehold.
There's been a gas and oil presence in this county, my goodness, since early 1900s. Much slower pace, much more regulated pace. And what's happening here now is just madness. It's just madness. It's hysteria.
The work John's doing today is paid for by the Wyoming Department of Fish and Game. It's part of a plan to ease the disturbance to wildlife wrought by development.
No question. You know, the country needs energy. But on the other hand, I feel like the energy companies have made an all-out effort to convince people we need access to everything. Of course, there's little or no talk, or not a lot of talk anyway, about conserving energy. And the industry now, for months and months, been running full-page ads in all the local media about how they need access to everything. And if they can just develop this resource the way they know how, it's going to be wonderful for everybody. It's going to stabilize the economy. It's going to be beneficial to wildlife. If they can just have free access to everything, it's going to be a panacea for everybody. And essentially what they want is just to gut this place. It's all driven by greed, as far as I'm concerned.
Along with the money, more pollution, traffic and dust, noise. Housing is scarce and costs more. A single-family home has doubled in price since the boom started. And there's more crime, with twice as many robberies now as in the year 2000. Domestic violence is spiking too.
I think that this community has been so torn apart by the energy development. The conflict has occurred everywhere from the Bureau of Land Management office to people who are making tremendous amounts of money from the oil and gas development to the people who, you know, are really opposing it. Everybody came to Sublette County originally. They washed up here because it was such a quiet and beautiful place, and because you were forced to go at the pace of a horse at the fastest.
Let's see if that's going to work.
And so, for one Sunday morning, I'd love to see the community come together, not in conflict, not in protest, but just to reassert a sense of pace, to go at the pace of a horse again for one morning. I think this is a very small first step, but every journey begins with a first step. So thank you so much for taking that step with us today. Going into the ride, I also felt very aware that this is a community that has been muted by the oil companies, either directly or indirectly. There is a threat from the oil and gas companies that if you speak out against them, they will not support you in your business. I was expecting no one to show up. There was this amazing moment when we rode out of the BLM parking lot, when I looked behind me and saw that there were people who were prepared to walk or ride their bicycles. A few brave, free people walking down the main street at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And I felt a tremendous sense of accomplishment that using your voice can look like a long, quiet ride in the hot sun. It might have been a tiny little step, but it was the only step that's important to your soul. And I was very, very proud.